Assalamu alaikum and good greetings. So actually, this week and next week is the examination period in our university. So the students are focusing on their exam. So with that theme, I think I would like to watch this video, Billionaire Mark Cuban's ultimate advice for students and young people, how to succeed in life. Right. So I think it would be interesting. Obviously, I do not think my students will be having the time to watch this during this period, but hopefully after the exam they can watch, and we'll see what kind of advice that Mark Cuban will be giving and what we can take from that. And without further ado, let's watch.
You went to IU,
Yep.
right? Now you got a lot of people that say forget about school,
They're
drop out of
idiots.
school.
They're idiots.
So you think they're idiots? Tell me why.
If you're going to have and run a business, if you don't understand accounting, you're already behind the 8 ball.
Can't you hire a guy that knows how to
But
run
then
accounting?
they still have to communicate to you, right? I mean, there's people that don't understand the concept of, the difference between profits and cash. Your accountant might tell you you're profitable, but your cash is going down. Not understanding a breakdown. And when you don't,
Do you think you need college to learn that?
yeah, I think you do, right? Because it may not, for some people, look, if you're so self-motivated that you can take an online course in accounting and teach yourself everything, you're way ahead of the game anyways. But most people aren't. And I'm not saying you have to go to Indiana. I'm not saying go to an expensive school. I don't care if you go to a community college and take accounting and spend 99 bucks for the class. Just, spending the money forces you to be more obligated to do it. But accounting, finance, lesser extent marketing, sales, if the school offers that, that's the language of business. And so while it's possible to teach yourself these things, and while it's possible to hire them, when you're starting your own company, you don't want to have to spend money hiring an accountant. And so your cost of opening up a business drops. But even more important than all that, that's the blocking and tackling, that's the language of business. The thing I learned at Indiana that was more important than anything else, I learned how to learn. And learning became far more important to me, because the one certainty in business is that it's always going to be changing.
That is interesting, right? Learn how to learn, which is because I still remember that I think every beginning of the semester I would ask the student, because I teach a subject of the first semester of engineering students. So they come after their matriculation or foundation, come to the university for the first semester. One of the subject in engineering that they take, I teach that subject. I always ask them, as a lecturer to you, the students, do you think my function is to teach you what you want to learn, or I have to actually motivate you to want to learn? Most of them will say both, which is interesting to me, because I say, shouldn't I expect you want to learn if you come into a university? Otherwise, why would you register to a university if you do not have the motivation to learn? Because I always see that I'm facilitating the learning process, but most of the time it seems that they need to be motivated to want to study for whatever reason. I know some of the reason, because most of them, they do not even know what they want to take. They do not even know what they want to be in the future. Most of them is the family is pushing them to go to university, take this course, etc. That's the norm in this part of the world. Yeah, so that's why we are facing this one. And I think from the perspective of what Mark Cuban is saying is, I'm assuming the foundation is that you already want to learn. So what should you learn? Should you actually go into a college, university to learn something? And he said from his experience that the most important thing is to learn how to learn. Right? So I also think that this is very important, right? Because one of the things that I learned when I'm doing my doctorate, my PhD, is basically that, right? To learn how to learn how to do research, to equip myself with the basic tools to be able to maneuver, so that after that I have that skill set, right? But in a surrounding, in an environment or ecosystem that somehow push them not learn how to learn, but learn what exactly will come in the exam, I think that's unfortunate. So okay, I'm going off on a tangent now, but I think that is important, right? Learning how to learn, and if a student can get that, they can survive outside, I would say. Just like many students cannot survive in the university even though they get good grades in the school. When we check how come, what is the big discrepancy, how can they perform based on the grade in school but not here? Oh, apparently they are being, what is the word in English for latih to be? It is, because that's a Malay word, where we drill them with exercises to make them familiar with the type of question so that they can address that question. But it's not the higher level of thinking, it's more of familiarization. So that's why when I teach, because I always tune the question to test whether they can think. So I will take, this is basically what I tend to do. If you are my student, you will see this, right? Or if you are a future student, you will see this. I will take a question with a figure, meaning a diagram from this chapter. I change the question to ask question about this chapter using diagram from this chapter, and half of the student, because they kind of memorize, right? Oh, this is from that chapter, so they do not even answer the question properly, because the question asks about this chapter, this concept, and they answer totally something irrelevant. It's about that chapter, right? Because they seems to be trained to familiarize and memorize, not to think, okay, this question asks this, so how to solve this question, right? So I find that interesting, because okay, this is a bigger question. Going back to the video,
if you're not always learning, to this minute, if I'm not continuously learning, if I'm not just absorbing as much as I can absorb, someone else is going to kick my ass, right? So you talk about paranoia. The greatest source of your paranoia should be knowledge. If someone else knows more than you do, and if you're not learning, if you don't know how to learn, if you don't have a thirst for learning and acquiring information, you're SOL.
What is that?
People like.
Okay. One thing that I really admire is these people's, even at the level of success that they are in, the willingness to learn and the willingness to admit they need to learn is because in our culture, I'm talking about Malay. If you are Malay, you know this, right? We are somewhat of the opposite, right? We are not willing to put ourselves in a way that it is clear that we do not know. How to say this? Meaning we do not want to be found out that we do not know. We are not willing to say something that is actually a wrong answer. Something like that, right? A common scene that you can see in the tutorial session, I always test this, right? In the tutorial session, I give them some problems, they do, and I know some of them will have problem to solve. So I just go around. The purpose is to see who need help. I want to explain and help. But their reaction is always the same. When I come close, they always, cover up whatever they're writing, because they know they do not know, but they do not want someone else to know they do not know. And by doing that, they do not want anyone to help them to correct their mistake or making them learn, right? So that's the environment that unfortunately is happening, right? What I watch Shark Tank a lot some time ago, right? I find it interesting because these guys, the sharks, right? They have millions, and for Mark Cuban, billion of dollar. But when something is being discussed, right, and someone do not know about that thing, right, because they are expert in different fields, right? So it's part of them. Just okay, I'm not familiar with that. What's that? What's that? Right. So I find that interesting because someone who have achieved so much it's okay for them to just admit and absorb the knowledge there and then, right? They are not shy or afraid to admit that they do not know that, and they want the answer there. They want the knowledge. They realize, oh, I do not know that. What can you explain that to me? And they absorb it, right? It's totally polar opposite to what we have here for our student. I do not know that. I want to hide the fact that I do not know that, and no one can help me until the end. So I will keep not knowing until the exam. It will be exposed anyway that I do not know because I cannot answer, and my grade will be, I have to repeat. And the cycle continue, unfortunately. So we have to know how to learn. We have to learn how to learn. We have to be willing to absorb knowledge continuously and admit, I do not know that. Please tell me. I want to absorb the knowledge, right? So,
like to say, the only stupid questions are the ones you don't ask, and that's not right, right? Because the questions you ask tell whoever more about you than anything else you do. Because in particular, it tells me about your preparation. If you ask me questions about just basic things that you should have known and you should have down to a science, that's going to disqualify you almost more than anything.
Do you think there needs to be a healthy level of paranoia?
Oh, absolutely.
There needs to be.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
Okay.
I always say, for every one of my businesses, I said, what would I do to kick my own ass? You right? So whatever business you have, there's somebody trying to put you out of business. There's somebody trying to take a bite out of your business. And it's better for you to figure out how they're going to do it rather than they do it. And so, yeah, that's being paranoid. And so you have to be paranoid. You have to anticipate other people's next moves. And you can't ever, downplay the competition. I was at a business plan competition this morning at a college, and they were kind of being dismissive of the competition. And so you can't ever do that. They're out there trying to take you down, and they're not just going to sit still. And if you're good, really, really good, you're going to inspire them to work even harder, faster, better. And so you have to be, very self-aware of what you're good at and what other people are good at. And, a healthy dose of paranoia makes a big difference. Is very helpful. If you're not always learning, to this minute, if I'm not continuously learning, if I'm not just absorbing as much as I can absorb, someone else is going to kick my ass. The greatest source of your paranoia should be knowledge. If someone else knows more than you do, and if you're not learning, if you don't know how to learn, if you don't have a thirst for learning and acquiring information, you're SOL.
wait, is it a repetition? Because I feel like it's deja vu.
There's certain guys that have the genetics to jump out of the gym, right? There's certain guys, that when they golf, they have the muscle memory and the discipline. Dirk Nowitzki may not be the most talented guy in the NBA, but his discipline and his focus to do what's necessary to be successful, he's willing to do, and combine it with being 7 feet tall and being skilled, it makes him an amazing basketball player. So it's understanding what your skill set is, finding the right place to use those skills, and then going for it. Will that make you 250 grand? It depends if you pick the right industry. But whatever industry you pick, if you outwork everybody, if you try to be a little smarter than everybody, if you try to be a better salesperson than everybody, if you try to be better prepared than everybody, you've got your best chance. Because if you don't do it and somebody else does, I have the saying, work like someone's trying to take it all away from you. I actually work like someone's spending 24 hours, working 24 hours to take it all away from you. And that's kind of the way I look at it.
Honestly, I have never have that mindset yet, because I'm not sure, because I'm a lecturer, so perhaps we don't feel it as such, right? So because I do understand in the business world, in the corporate world, yeah, that's embedded in the reality, right? So maybe personally I should also rethink why my development pace is so slow, because maybe I do not have that mindset.
What would you say is the number one reason why people fail? Not necessarily why they make it, the complete opposite.
Right, lack of brains, lack of effort.
Lack of brains, lack of effort.
Yeah, they don't do the work. They don't learn, when you walk in the room, when you start a business and you start to talk about somebody, you're never in a vacuum with no competition. And if there's going to be competition, that means somebody else knows your business as well as you do when you get started. And if you walk into a competitive environment and they still know more about the business than you do and more about your customers, you're going to lose. But most people don't consider that. They don't do the work. They don't learn more about their industry. They don't know even about their business. And so you've got to put in the effort to know more about your industry than anybody else. And that's the brains part, and that's the effort part as well. Because look, if you're competing with me, you better know what you're doing, otherwise I'm gonna kick your ass, and you're not gonna outwork me. And so, the combination is usually what kills businesses early on more than anything. But my dad was always like, if you want something, you have to earn it. And to his credit, he never said, no, you can't do that. So whether it was selling garbage bags, baseball cards, stamps, whatever it was, he never held me back. And so I think that was as important as anything. And sometimes being young and trying things, you're so naive and you don't know any better, all you do is learn. And if you fail, it doesn't matter. And so whether I was 9, 10, 12, 16, 21, the failures were irrelevant. And whether you're 9, 12, 16, 21, 22, 24, I'm sleeping on the couch, I have a car with a hole in the floorboard, I'm living like a bum and like a student. And so what did I have to lose? And so I think that influenced me as much as anything. So my dad was like, go for it, why not? What have you got to lose?
So yeah, that is because I have watched these people, the successful people, they share about their stories, etc. Those are the things that I tend to pick up. Okay, I have some form of idea that I want to give that to my children. However, the reality that we are living in, I'm talking about our culture here, is quite different, because we have the system that makes students to fear failure. Fear to even raise your hand if you are not fully confident of your answer, because I'm afraid that this answer might be wrong. I'm 90% sure this is the answer, but I might be wrong, so might as well do not raise my hand. So that kind of things that I think is holding back the potential of children, right? I'm still figuring out how to really, because I hope I give the best preparation possible for my children. If you have any experience in this, do share, right? How to
books like this, more than anything, have changed my life. More than
So do you think, like, let's just say if we put 10 guys here, you interview them, okay? You could, within a 5-10 minute interview, say, this dude's not gonna make it as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I can typically tell, right? I can tell by their passion, I can tell by their focus, I can tell by their preparation. There's a whole realm of things in any business. Here's the business you're in, and here's 1,000 things that influence whether or not you're going to be successful. Through my experience in businesses, I can put myself in his position and say, okay, here are 900 of the 1,000 things he has to be aware of, and then go through and ask. And by how many of those or her issues they've been able to address already, that kind of gives me a sense of how hard they're willing to work. And I can tell by the questions they ask me. So all I have to do is say, okay, what do you want to know?
But I'm curious, if you and I were buddies in high school, say we're 14 years old, 15 years old, and we know each other, would I bet on you being who you are today?
No chance.
Really?
No chance.
Tell me why.
I had my good friends, and we hung out, and I was a hustler. There's no question I was a hustler.
Even in high school?
Oh yeah, and into business in a big way. But I don't think people saw it in me. It wasn't like people looked at me and go, oh, he's destined to succeed.
So in high school, you were the fun guy. Were you always the guy that made people laugh? Were you very competitive? Were you the sports
I was
guy?
always
Were you the
competitive.
technology guy?
I was into sports. I wasn't great at it. I was just decent. Wasn't a technology guy. I mean, I was into learning. I was a business guy. I was the guy reading about business all the time, reading business books all the time. You know, going to junior achievement. I was a junior achievement geek.
Why though? Why were you reading business books?
Because that's what I knew. I mean, I was wired that I always, you know, I started my first business when I was 12. I was buying and selling baseball cards, buying and selling stamps, anything I could do to make money. I was hustling and trying to do. So I was into business, but I not so much where it was all my friends were into it with me, so they wouldn't know.
Yeah, I have picked up on that stories because you know, Shark Tank, other interviews. I know about that aspect about him, and one of my children is having that element, right? So maybe I'll talk about it in the different video, because I'm thinking how to nurture that, right? Because among my children, there's one that stand out in that aspect, right? The entrepreneurship, I don't drive or grit that you know, when you observe, it's quite different than the others, right? So, but my fear is that it died down because of the surrounding, that we are not like he said, his dad let him go and have a garage sale, etc., right? So go door to door, sell baseball cards, etc. So
do you think there's a proven formula that if a brand rookie guy, he's got a lot of ambition, he's got a lot of desire, but not a lot of knowledge on how to, do you think if he follows a formula, he's guaranteed to make it as an entrepreneur?
No.
Okay, so you don't believe there's a guarantee to make it?
No, because who knows who you're going to be competing with? So if you put two people both following the same formula, both in the same industry, right? Which one wins? You know, maybe they both can win and both be successful, but you know, so I don't think there's a default template for success, but I think there's things that you can do to put yourself in the best position to succeed.
all right, so I think there's a lot that we can take. Of course, it is tailored towards becoming an entrepreneur, right? So even though the title is advice for students and young people, so the students part, yes, I think in terms of learning how to learn, also accounting, etc., there to get the basics, that is part of the foundation to become a great entrepreneur and know your business, know in and out of running a company, etc., right? Yeah. It is interesting though, just to just mention for a bit, because in university, including here, sometimes we have this like entrepreneurship drive or course or something, but I do always wonder, is it really, because I've watched this entrepreneur tell their stories, blah blah blah, and I somewhat sense a certain qualities that is need to be nurtured and need to be guided to lead them to the path that they need to be in, right? Some sort. But from I don't know, lecturer or administrator or university making a course about entrepreneurship when we are ourselves is not really a successful entrepreneur, we just guess, oh, entrepreneur means this academically as well. Sometimes we train them to become a retail seller or something, right? They do booths, etc., right? I think selling things is one thing, but the mindset and the drive as an entrepreneur is a different thing, I think, right? So I'm not qualified to talk about this anyway. So anyway, I think there are a lot of things as well for my personal development that I should take. But anyway, I think that's it for today. Hopefully you have benefited something from what was shared by Mark Cuban there. Thank you for watching. See you next time.